Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Valkyrie. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but he still loved the peace of the stars. His crew was running their normal checks when something changed everything. Lisa Rodriguez sat at the communications station. She was the best signal officer in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she listened to the usual space noise. Then she heard something different. Her face went pale as she turned to Jake. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," Lisa said. Her voice was tight with worry. "This isn't like anything we've seen before." Jake walked over to her station. He could see the readings on her screen. The signal was strong and clear. It came from far away, beyond any human colony. Most important of all, it was not human. "Play it," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with sounds no human had ever heard. It was like music mixed with math. The signal, repeated over and over. Even without understanding the words, everyone could hear the fear in it. This was a cry for help. Dr. Carl Bennett rushed to the bridge. He was the ship's science officer and the smartest person Jake knew. Carl had spent years studying alien signals that never came. Now he had a real one to work with. "Give me 20 minutes, Carl said as he connected his equipment to the communication system. His hands shook with excitement. "This is incredible. Look at these patterns. This is definitely intelligent life." Jake ordered the ship to full alert. If there were aliens out there, humans needed to be ready for anything. The crew moved quickly to battle stations. They had trained for this moment, but never thought it would really happen. Carl worked like a man possessed. He ran the signal through every program he had. Slowly, the alien sounds began to make sense. Numbers came first, then simple words. The math was the same everywhere in the universe. That made translation possible. "Got it," Carl said after 2 hours. His face was red with excitement. "Commander, you need to hear this." The translated message played through the bridge speakers. The voice was high and musical, but the words were clear. The aliens called themselves the Alvari Republic. They were peaceful people who mined rocks on distant worlds. They had never hurt anyone, but something terrible was happening to them. Another alien race, called the Vorthan Empire, was attacking them. The Vorthans were destroying their cities and killing their people. The Alvari had nowhere to run and no way to fight back. The message said something that made Jake's blood run cold. The Vorthans had done this before. They had destroyed 17 different alien races in the past 100 years. They killed everyone and took everything. The Alvari would be next unless someone helped them. But who could help them? The Alvari had heard stories about humans. They called them Deathworlders because humans came from a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth had deadly weather, dangerous animals, and diseases that would kill most aliens. But humans had survived and grown strong. The Alvari message was simple. They were asking the Deathworlders to help them. They knew humans were warriors. They hoped humans were also heroes. Jake immediately sent the message to Admiral Patricia Hayes. She commanded the entire Terran defense fleet from Earth. This decision was too big for one ship commander. Admiral Hayes received the message while she was in a meeting about trade routes. She was a tough woman who had fought in 3 wars. She had never backed down from a fight, but she had never fought aliens before. This was new territory for all of humanity. The Admiral called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. They met using quantum communication across dozens of star systems. Every captain and admiral in the human fleet joined the call. "This is it," Admiral Hayes said. "This is what we've been preparing for. We always wondered what we would do when we met aliens. Now we know. They need our help." Some commanders were worried. Humans had never fought aliens before. The Vorthans. might be too strong. The Althery world was 200 light-years away. That was further than any human military had ever traveled, but other commanders were ready to fight. Captain Alex Turner of the U.E.'s Thunderbolt spoke for many of them. We didn't become the strongest species in our part of space by running from fights. If these Vorthans think they can destroy entire races, they need to learn what happens when they mess with our friends. Captain Maria Santos of the U's Defiant agreed. The Althery asked for our help. They believe in us. We can't let them down. The debate went on for hours. Some commanders wanted to send a small force to scout the situation. Others wanted to send everything they had. A few thought humans should stay out of alien business completely. Finally, Admiral Hayes made her decision. We're going to help them. This is what being human means. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We stand up to bullies no matter how big they are. The Admiral ordered the Third Fleet to prepare for Operation Lifeline. 12 battleships, 30 cruisers, and 50 support ships would make the journey. Commander Ryan Clark, the fleet's best tactical mind, would plan the mission. It would be the largest military operation in human history. Jake felt proud as he received his orders. The U's Valkyrie would join the fleet heading to save the Althery. They were going to show the galaxy what humans were really made of. The message went out to every human world. The Deathworlders were going to war. The human fleet gathered at Station Alpha, the largest military base in human space. Admiral Hayes stood on the observation deck and watched her ships arrive. She had never seen so many warships in one place. The sight filled her with both pride and worry. The Third Fleet was impressive. The battleships were massive, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The cruisers were fast and deadly, built for hit-and-run attacks. The support ships carried everything the fleet would need for a long campaign far from home. But Admiral Hayes knew they were heading into unknown danger. The Vorthans had destroyed 17 alien civilizations. They must be incredibly powerful to do that. The humans were about to find out just how powerful. Commander Jake Morrison brought the UES Valkyrie into formation with the other ships. Crew was excited and nervous. They had trained for space battles, but always against other humans. Fighting aliens would be completely different. Chief Engineer Tom Phillips was already busy preparing the ship for the long journey. He worked in the engine room with his team, checking every system twice. The jump to Althery space would push their engines to the limit. We're going to need more power, Tom told Jake over the communication system. The jump drives weren't designed for this kind of distance. I'm going to have to modify them during the flight. Jake nodded. Human engineers were famous for being able to fix anything. If Tom said he could modify the engines during flight, Jake believed him. That was the kind of thinking that made humans special. Dr. Susan Lee, the fleet's alien life expert, was studying everything the Althery had sent them. She worked in her laboratory, trying to understand what kind of people they were trying to save. The information was fascinating and sad. The Althery were nothing like humans. They were small and fragile, with bones that were hollow like bird bones. Their skin was thin and would tear easily. They came from a world with light gravity and gentle weather. They had never needed to be tough because their world was safe. They're like living glass, Dr. Lee told Admiral Hayes during a video call. Beautiful and delicate, but so easy to break. I don't think they've ever had a real war in their entire history. That made the Vorthan attack even more horrible. The Althery had no way to defend themselves. They were peaceful miners who just wanted to dig rocks and raise their families. They had never hurt anyone. The Vorthans were the opposite. Intelligence Officer Nick Parker had studied all the data about them. He gave his report to the fleet commanders during their daily briefing. The Vorthans are apex predators, Nick said. They evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived. They're bigger than humans, stronger than humans, and they've been conquering other species for centuries. The Vorthan ships were huge, much larger than human ships. Their weapons were powered by antimatter, which could destroy entire cities in seconds. They fought in large formations, using their superior numbers to overwhelm their enemies. They've never lost a war, Nick continued. Every species they've attacked has been completely destroyed. They don't take prisoners. They don't make deals. They just kill everyone and take everything. The news was sobering, but it didn't change anything. The humans were still going to help the Aldari. If anything, learning how evil the Vorthans were made the humans more determined to stop them. Captain Jennifer Walsh of the UES Rampart was in charge of the fleet's scout ships. She sent fast ships ahead to watch for enemy forces. The journey to Aldari space would take 3 weeks, but they needed to know what they were flying into. During the long journey, the human fleet became a moving city. The ships stayed in formation, but crews moved between them in small shuttles. Engineers shared ideas for improving their weapons. Soldiers trained together for the battles ahead. Tom Phillips and his engineering teams worked miracles. They turned cargo bays into weapons factories. They modified mining equipment to work as siege weapons. They even improved the ship's shields using new techniques they invented during the flight. We're not just fixing problems, Tom explained to Admiral Hayes. We're making our ships better than they've ever been. By the time we reach the Aldari, we'll be ready for anything. The medical teams prepared for the worst. Dr. Corinne White, the fleet's chief medical officer, set up trauma centers on every ship. She had never treated battle wounds before, but she was ready to learn. Human medicine is the best in the galaxy, she told her staff. We've had to learn how to fix everything because our world tried to kill us every day. Now we'll use that knowledge to save lives. The soldiers trained constantly. Colonel Dan Rodriguez led 50,000 Marines who were ready to fight on alien worlds. They practiced boarding enemy ships, fighting in zero gravity, and surviving in hostile environments. Remember, Colonel Rodriguez told his troops, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. That makes us the good guys, and good guys don't give up. As they got closer to Aldari space, the scout ships sent back disturbing news. Captain Walsh's fast ships had found the Vorthan fleet. There were 47 enemy warships surrounding the Aldari planet. They were systematically destroying cities from orbit. It's horrible, Captain Walsh reported. They're not even trying to conquer the planet. They're just killing everyone they can find. The Aldari are hiding underground, but they won't be able to hide forever. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. The Vorthan ships were twice as large as the human ships, and there were more of them. In a straight fight, the humans would lose, but humans had never been known for fighting fair. They had survived on a death world by being clever, not just strong. Now they would use that cleverness to save the Aldari. Admiral Hayes called a meeting of all ship commanders. They met in the conference room of her flagship, the UES Liberty. The room was filled with humanity's best military minds. We're going into battle tomorrow, Admiral Hayes said. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting in enemy territory. By all logic, we should lose. She paused and looked around the room. Every face was determined, but we're not going to lose. We're going to win because we're human. We're going to win because we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. We're going to win because that's what Deathworlders do. The fleet prepared for battle. In a few hours, they would drop out of hyperspace and face the Vorthan Empire. The fate of the Aldari people hung in the balance. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Aldari system. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the tactical display fill with enemy contacts. 47 Vorthan warships surrounded the planet like vultures around a dying animal. "My God," whispered Captain Alex Turner over the communication channel. "Look at the size of those ships." The Vorthan vessels were massive, each one 3 times larger than the biggest human battleship. They're dark. Hulls bristled with weapons that could crack planets. They moved in perfect formation, showing the discipline of a race that had conquered the galaxy through War-God Commander Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the UES Valkyrie as the enemy fleet began to turn toward them. The Vorthans had detected the human arrival and were moving to intercept. In minutes, the battle would begin. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes," came the voice over the fleet communication system. "We knew this would be hard. We knew the odds were against us. But we came, here to save lives, and that's what we're going to do." The Admiral had spent the last few hours planning with her best commanders. They had developed a strategy that would have been impossible for any other species. Where most aliens saw certain death, humans saw opportunity. "Remember the plan," Admiral Hayes continued. "We're not here to win a fair fight. We're here to save the Aldari people. Every minute we buy them is another chance for them to survive." The human fleet split into 3 groups. Captain Turner would lead the first group in a direct assault on the Vorthan formation. His job was to punch through their lines and reach the planet. Captain Maria Santos would take the second group around the gas giants' rings, using them as cover for a surprise attack. Admiral Hayes would keep the third group in reserve, ready to help wherever needed. Commander Ryan Clark, the fleet's tactical genius, had spent weeks studying Vorthan battle records. He had found their weakness. The Vorthans were used to fighting species that followed predictable patterns. They expected their enemies to form neat battle lines and fight according to established rules. Humans didn't follow rules. When lives were at stake, the battle began when the Vorthans fired the first shot. A massive beam of energy lanced out from their flagship, missing the UE's Thunderbolt by mere meters. The space around the human fleet lit up with weapons fire as both sides opened up with everything they had. Jake Morrison watched his tactical display as the human ships began their attack. Instead of forming a battle line like the Vorthans expected, the human ships moved in small groups. 3 or 4 ships would work together, attacking one target before moving to the next. "It's like watching wolves hunt," Jake said to his weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Katie Miller. "They're coordinating perfectly." The human tactic confused the Vorthans. They were used to fighting large formations, not small groups that moved unpredictably. Their massive ships were powerful, but they were also slow. The smaller human ships could dance around them, striking quickly and moving away before the Vorthans could respond. Captain Turner led the first breakthrough. His group of cruisers accelerated to maximum speed, weaving through the Vorthan formation like fighters instead of warships. The enemy tried to target them, but the humans were too fast and too unpredictable. "This is Turner to all ships," came his voice over the communication system. "The path is clear. Medical ships, get to that planet now." The human medical ships raced toward the Aldari world, while the warships provided cover. These ships were filled with doctors, medical supplies, and equipment to evacuate civilians. They were the most important part of the mission. Captain Santos emerged from the gas giant's rings with her group, just as the Vorthans were starting to adapt to the human tactics. Her surprise attack hit the enemy fleet in the side, causing chaos. In their formation, "All ships focus fire on the big one," Santos ordered, targeting the Vorthan flagship. "If we can take out their command ship, the rest might scatter." The human ships concentrated their fire on the massive Vorthan vessel. Their weapons were smaller than the enemy's, but they were more accurate. Human targeting systems had been designed to hit small, fast-moving targets on Earth. Hitting a large, slow-moving ship was much easier, but the Vorthons were not helpless. Their return fire was devastating. The U.E.'s Courage took a direct hit and began to break apart. Captain Steve Williams and his crew fought to keep their ship together, but the damage was too severe. "This is Williams," came his voice over the communication. "System, we're losing power. Hull breach on all decks. We're not going to make it." Jake Morrison watched in horror as the Courage drifted helplessly toward the Vorthon flagship. The enemy ship was preparing to finish her off with another shot. That's when Captain Williams made the decision that would change everything. All ships. "This is Courage," Williams said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Tell my family I died saving people who needed help. That's a good way to go." The U.E.'s Courage changed course and accelerated toward the Vorthon flagship. Williams was going to ram his dying ship into the enemy vessel. It was a desperate move, but it was the kind of thing humans did when they had no other choice. "Williams." "No," Admiral Hayes shouted over the communication system. "Get your crew to the escape pods." "No time, Admiral," Williams replied. "Besides, someone needs to show these aliens what happens when they mess with our friends." The Courage struck the Vorthon flagship at maximum speed. The explosion was visible from across the star system. Both ships were destroyed in the collision, but the psychological effect was enormous. The Vorthons had never seen anything like it. Most species valued their own lives above all else. They would surrender rather than die for strangers. But the humans had just watched one of their own sacrifice, himself to save aliens he had never met. The destruction of their flagship threw the Vorthon fleet into confusion. Their formation broke apart as individual ships tried to avoid the human attack groups. Some Vorthon captains began to retreat, unwilling to face an enemy that fought with such determination. Lieutenant Commander Katie Miller saw her chance. She was commanding the fast attack ship Hughes Wasp, the smallest vessel in the fleet. While the larger ships kept the Vorthons busy, she led a boarding party toward a damaged enemy cruiser. "This is crazy," her second-in-command said as they approached. "The Vorthon ship. We don't even know if we can breathe their air." "We'll find out," Katie replied. "Besides, crazy is what we do best." The boarding party cut through the hull of the Vorthon ship while it was still under fire. They fought through decompression, toxic atmosphere, and gravity fields that would have killed most aliens. The Vorthons inside the ship were shocked too. See humans continuing to fight in conditions that should have been instantly fatal. The battle in space continued for hours. The human ships fought like they were defending Earth itself. They took risks that other species would never consider. They kept fighting even when their ships were damaged and their crew were wounded. Slowly, the tide of battle began to turn. The Vorthons were powerful, but they were not prepared for the human way of fighting. They had expected a traditional battle between fleets. Instead, they got a chaotic brawl where anything could happen. On the planet below, the medical ships were performing their own miracle. Human doctors and Marines were evacuating Aldari civilians from the underground shelters where they had been. Hiding. The aliens were amazed by the humans' ability to work in the dangerous conditions on their world. "Keep it up," Admiral Hayes told her fleet. "We're winning. The Vorthons are starting to break. A few more hours, and we'll have them beaten." But the battle was far from over. The Vorthons still had more ships, and they were beginning to adapt to human tactics. The next few hours would determine whether the rescue mission succeeded or failed. Deathworlders were proving their reputation, but the real test was still to come. The space battle had been raging for 6 hours when the real rescue began. Admiral Hayes watched from the bridge of the UES Liberty as her medical ships reached the Aldari planet. The surface was covered in smoke and fire from the Vorthon bombardment. But there were still people alive down there. Colonel Dan Rodriguez led the first wave of Marines to the planet's surface. His transport ship, the UES Falcon, landed in the middle of what used to be the largest Althery city. The buildings were destroyed, but the humans could detect life signs coming from underground. "This is Rodriguez to all ground teams," the colonel said over the communication system. "The Altheray are hiding in tunnel systems beneath the city. We need to get down there and bring them out. A marine landing was dangerous." Vorthan ground forces were still on the planet, hunting for any Altheray survivors. The human Marines had to fight their way through enemy patrols while searching for the underground shelters. Sergeant Lisa Parker led a squad of Marines into the tunnel entrance they had found. The tunnels were small and narrow, designed for the delicate Altheray people. The human soldiers had to crawl through spaces that would have been comfortable for the aliens, but were cramped for humans. "I can hear them," Parker whispered to her squad. "There are voices ahead, lots of them." The Marines found the first group of Altheray huddled in a large cave deep underground. There were over 1,000 of them, including many children. They were terrified when they saw the human soldiers at first, but Dr. Susan Lee had prepared for this. "We're here to help," Parker said, using the translation device Dr. Lee had given her. "We're the humans. We came because you asked for help." The Altheray couldn't believe it. They had sent their message into space, hoping someone would hear it, but they never expected anyone to actually come. Now here were the legendary Deathworlders, ready to risk their lives to save people they had never met. The evacuation was incredibly difficult. The Altheray were fragile and couldn't handle the rough treatment that humans could survive. The Marines had to carry them gently, like they were made of glass. Many of the aliens were injured from the bombing, and human medics worked to save as many as possible. "We need more time," Dr. Corinne White told Admiral Hayes from the planet's surface. "There are thousands of them down here, and they're all hurt. Some are too injured to move." Above the planet, the space battle continued. The human fleet was holding its own, but barely. They had lost 6 ships, and the survivors were running low on ammunition. The Vorthans were pressing their attack, trying to break through to the planet and finish their genocide. Commander Jake Morrison found himself in the middle of the fiercest fighting. The U's Valkyrie was surrounded by 3 Vorthan destroyers, their massive weapons tearing pieces off his ship. His crew fought desperately to keep the ship together. "Hull breach on Deck 4, reported his damage control officer. "We're losing atmosphere fast. Seal it off," Jake ordered. "We're not leaving until every Altheray is safe." The human ships were taking a beating, but they refused to retreat. Every minute they bought was another chance for the Marines to save more lives. The Deathworlders were living up to their reputation, but the cost was enormous. Captain Rebecca Jones and her crew on the UES Titan were fighting through 3 Vorthan ships to reach another part of the planet. There were reports of Altheray survivors in the southern continent, but Vorthan ground forces were closing in on them. "This is Jones to Rodriguez," she said over the communication system. "We're going to land near the southern shelters. Can you get a team there?" "Already on the way," Rodriguez replied. He was leading a team of his best Marines across the dangerous terrain. The planet's surface was full of craters from the bombing, and Vorthan patrols were everywhere. The Marines reached the southern shelters, just as the Vorthans were preparing to attack them. The human soldiers took positions around the tunnel entrance and prepared to hold off the alien assault. "Remember," Rodriguez told his men, "we're not here to win. We're here to buy time. Every minute we hold them off is another minute for the evacuation." The battle on the ground was as fierce as the one in space. The Vorthans were bigger and stronger than humans, but they had never fought anyone from a Deathworld before. The human Marines used every trick they had learned on Earth, turning the hostile environment to their advantage. Sergeant Mike Torres led a squad through the ruins of the city, using the wreckage as cover. The Vorthans were powerful, but they were not used to fighting in such conditions. The humans had grown up on a world where everything was trying to kill them. This was just another day for them. "There's another entrance," Torres reported. "I can see Aldery coming out. Looks like families with children." The evacuation continued through the night. Human transport ships landed repeatedly, taking load after load of Aldery refugees to safety. The medical ships worked frantically to treat the wounded. Dr. Lee coordinated between the human rescuers and the Aldery survivors, making sure everyone was accounted for. The Aldery were amazed by what they saw. Human soldiers were fighting with wounds that would have killed most aliens. Human medics were working in conditions that should have been impossible to survive. Human pilots were flying damaged ships through enemy fire to reach stranded civilians. "Why are you doing this?" asked Elder Keth, one of the Aldery leaders. "We are not your people. You owe us nothing." Dr. Lee translated his question for Colonel Rodriguez. The colonel thought for a moment before answering. "Because it's the right thing to do," Rodriguez said. "Where we come from, you help people who need help. That's what makes us human." The rescue operation lasted 18 hours. It was the longest continuous battle in human history. By the time it was over, the human fleet had lost 4 ships and over 3,000 people. But they had accomplished something incredible. 80,000-9,000 Aldery had been saved. Nearly the entire population of their mining colony was now safe aboard human ships. The evacuation was complete, but the battle wasn't over yet. The Vorthan fleet was regrouping for one final assault. Their commander was furious that the humans had interfered with their conquest. They were going to destroy the human fleet and finish what they had started. "This is Admiral Hayes to all ships," came the voice over the communication system. "We've done the impossible. We've saved the Aldery people. Now we need to make sure they stay safe." The human fleet formed a protective screen around the transport ships carrying the Aldery refugees. They were damaged and outnumbered, but they were not beaten. The Deathworlders had one more fight in them. "All ships, prepare for final battle," Admiral Hayes ordered. "We're going to show these Vorthans what happens when they mess with our friends." The last phase of the battle was about to begin. The humans had saved the Aldery, but now they had to survive long enough to get them to safety. The galaxy was watching, and the Deathworlders were about to make history. The rescue was complete, but the legend was just beginning. The final battle began at dawn on the Aldery homeworld. The Vorthan fleet, now down to 31 ships, formed a massive wall of steel and weapons. Their commander, War Leader Vex, was furious that these unknown aliens had interfered with his conquest. "Destroy them all," Vex ordered his fleet. "Show the galaxy what happens to those who oppose the Vorthan Empire." Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the enemy formation approach. Her fleet was battered and worn, but they were not defeated. Behind them, the transport ships carrying 89,000 Aldery refugees were preparing to jump to safety. "This is it," Admiral Hayes said to her commanders. "We hold them here until the transports can escape. No matter what happens to us, those people are going home." The human fleet was outnumbered 3-1, but they had something. The Vorthans didn't understand. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves. Every human ship contained people who had volunteered to risk everything for strangers. Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his ship's position as the enemy approached. The U's Valkyrie was heavily damaged, but her weapons still worked. His crew had been fighting for 20 hours straight, but they were ready for more. "All weapons charged and ready," reported Lieutenant Commander Katie Miller. "We're not going down easy." The Vorthans opened fire first, filling space with deadly energy beams. The human ships scattered, using their superior speed and maneuverability. to avoid the worst of the attack. But they couldn't dodge everything. The U's hammer took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. "Hammer is gone," reported Captain Turner from the U's Thunderbolt. But they took 2 Vorthan ships with them. The ram attack worked. The human ships fought with desperate courage. They used every trick they had learned, every advantage they could find. When their weapons ran out, they used their ships as missiles. When their shields failed, they used debris as cover. The battle raged for 6 hours. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The Vorthans were powerful, but they were not prepared for enemies who fought like the humans did. They had never faced anyone who would ram their ships into enemy vessels or fight to the death for people they had never met. Captain Maria Santos led the decisive attack. Her ship, the UE Sapphire, was nearly destroyed, but she managed to get close to the Vorthan flagship. Instead of trying to ram it, she did something unexpected. "All ships, this is Santos," she said over the communication system. "I'm going to try something crazy. Cover me." Santos piloted her damaged ship directly alongside the Vorthan flagship. At the last second, she ejected her ship's entire missile payload at point-blank range. The explosion tore through both ships, but the Vorthan vessel was completely destroyed. Their flagship gone, the Vorthan fleet began to break apart. Some ships tried to continue the attack, but others began to retreat. The human defense had broken their will to fight. "This is Admiral Hayes to all Vorthan ships," came the voice over the communication system. "Your war leader is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. Leave now or share their fate." War leader Vex was indeed dead, killed in the destruction of his ship. The surviving Vorthan commanders faced a choice. They could continue the attack and probably win, but at a terrible cost. Or they could retreat and live to fight another day. For the first time in their history, the Vorthans chose to retreat. They had never faced an enemy like the humans before. These Deathworlders fought with a courage that bordered on insanity. They were willing to die for people they had never met. The human fleet watched as the Vorthan ships turned and jumped away. The battle was over. The Aldari were safe. The rescue mission had succeeded. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes," came the voice over the communication system. "We did it. We saved them all." The celebration was brief. The human fleet had paid a terrible price for their victory. 7 ships were destroyed, and thousands of people were dead. But they had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. News of the battle spread across the galaxy at light speed. The Galactic Council, which had governed most of known space for centuries, was stunned. These humans had appeared from nowhere and defeated the mighty Vorthan Empire. Ambassador Chris Taylor was humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. She had been trying for years to get the other species to take humans seriously. Now she found herself at the center of a political revolution. "The humans have done something incredible," said Council Leader Zara of the Centauri Federation. "They risked everything to save a species they had never met. This changes everything." The Aldari sent a message to Earth that was broadcast across the galaxy. Elder Keth, speaking for his entire people, offered humanity a formal alliance. "The Deathworlders have proven that strength and compassion can exist together," he said. "The Aldari Republic pledges eternal friendship to humanity. We offer our knowledge and our loyalty to those who saved us." The response from other species was immediate and overwhelming. Within days, 37 different alien civilizations sent diplomatic envoys to Earth. They all wanted to ally with the species that had defeated the Vorthans. The hegemony of Zeta, Reticuli, which had been hostile to human expansion, suddenly offered a non-aggression pact. The Tau Ceti Collective, one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, invited humans to join their research programs. Most importantly, the Vorthan Empire agreed to a ceasefire. They had never been defeated before, and they were not sure how to handle it. Commander Jake Morrison found himself promoted to Admiral after the battle. He was put in charge of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. The humans had become the species that other civilizations turned to when facing extinction. "We never wanted to be conquerors," Admiral Morrison said during his first address to the Galactic Council. "We just wanted to help people who couldn't help themselves. That's what being human means to us." Captain Alex Turner was given command of the first human embassy on the Aldari homeworld. The planet was being rebuilt with human help, and the two species were learning from each other. The Aldari taught humans about advanced mining techniques, while humans shared their medical knowledge. "It's amazing," Turner reported back to Earth. "The Aldari are so grateful that they want to give us everything they have. But they don't understand that we didn't do this for reward. We did it because it was right." Captain Maria Santos, who had survived the destruction of her ship, was given command of the new Interspecies Protection Fleet. This was a joint force made up of human ships and volunteers from other species. Their mission was to protect threatened civilizations across the galaxy. "We're not trying to build an empire," Santos explained to the new recruits. "We're trying to build something better. A galaxy where strong species protect weak ones instead of destroying them." The Terran Guardianship was officially established 6 months after the battle. It was a military organization dedicated to protecting threatened species, but it operated under strict rules. They would only intervene when asked for help, and they would never conquer the people they saved. Dr. Susan Lee became the head of the new Interspecies Medical Corps. She worked with alien doctors to develop treatments that could help all species. The medical knowledge humans had gained from surviving on their death world was proving useful across the galaxy. "Every species has something to teach us," Dr. Lee said during a conference on the Aldari homeworld. "The Aldari showed us new ways to think about engineering. The Centaurians taught us about energy manipulation. We're all stronger when we work together." The Vorthan Empire underwent traumatic changes after their defeat. The warrior culture that had driven them to conquer other species was challenged by younger Vorthans who had witnessed human courage. A civil war began between the old guard and reformers who wanted peace. Elder Vex's son, Commander Karn, led the peace faction. He had fought in the battle against the humans and had seen their willingness to sacrifice themselves for others. It had changed his view of what strength really meant. "The humans showed us that true power comes from protecting others, not destroying them," Karn said during a secret meeting with human diplomats. "Some of us want to learn this new way." The galaxy was changing. For the first time in centuries, species were talking about cooperation instead of conquest. The human rescue of the Aldari had proven that it was possible to be strong and compassionate at the same time. Dr. Carl Bennett, who had first translated the Aldari distress signal, was put in charge of the new Institute for Galactic Communication. His job was to make sure that no cry for help would ever go unanswered again. "We're building a network," Bennett explained. "Every species will be able to call for help if they need it. And somewhere, someone will be listening." Admiral Patricia Hayes remained in command of the Terran Defense Fleet, but her role had expanded. She was now responsible for coordinating with allied species and planning joint operations. The human military was becoming the backbone of galactic peacekeeping. 10 years ago, we were alone in our little corner of space, Admiral Hayes said, during a ceremony honoring the fallen. "Today, we have friends across the galaxy. But we must never forget the price of that friendship.